Hey everyone, welcome to Bridge Stories. This is our new podcast giving people space and time to tell their stories of encountering God and being changed by Him. We hope you're encouraged by these stories and also that you leave excited that you know a lot of really awesome people a little bit better. So sit back and enjoy. Okay, let's do it. You ready?
Ready.
I'm here with I consider you a friend. I hope you consider me the same.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm here with my friend Greg. We are getting caffeinated by the blessing of our wonderful mutual friend Cambria.
Yeah.
Shout out Cambria. She just got back from Hawaii and she brought me back some really good coffee. So we're trying it together, and our first reaction was both, "Wow, that's the real thing." So if you're watching this and you're jealous, hit Cambria up. The next time she goes to Hawaii, she's got a great coffee connection. Greg, I'm excited that you're here. Really grateful that you took the time out, and I can't wait to, just have a really good, fruitful conversation with you.
I love these podcasts.
Yeah, you're one of the people, there's a handful that text every time that just say, I've been watching every single one. So I think you have a pretty good idea of what you've committed yourself to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. I love getting to know people outside of just seeing them at church. And man, some of the stories and some of the things that people have been through, it just blows me away of what God has done, you know, and what God can do if I'm in that situation. Very, very encouraging.
Yeah, we were talking before we pushed record that some of these stories are not easy stories to tell, right? That the reason people can tell them is because they've been set free for real. Some of the things people have shared sitting here are things that you would not share if you have not been set free. So it's even more powerful that God really is in the business of doing.
Yes.
So I want to just kick us off. I want to hear about you. I feel like I've known you for, I don't know, what's it been, 4 or 5 years, something like that, maybe less.
So that's interesting because I don't know. I came here 2 separate times. Did you know that?
I did not know that. No.
So if I can just go on with this, I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds, but we came here, my kids and I, and we were going to a great church. I'll just say at Calvary Chapel of Tustin, and it was shortly after, about a year after my wife passed away. I just felt like it's time to try something different. I love the people over there. They helped us out tremendously after Amy passed away, but it's kind of difficult to explain, but the Lord was leading me out. And I thought, you know what, Calvary Chapel Tustin is very unique, it's very good. And it's going to probably take a while to find a new church, maybe a year or so. And this was the first church we tried. And my first impression was we walked from our house and we were walking by the sign. And I didn't know anything about this church. I just drove past it every day. And I see this guy outside smoking a cigarette, and I'm thinking, oh, no. It's one of those churches where everybody's carnal, you know? But it turns out that it was just a random guy sitting in front of the sign. He doesn't even go here. When I walked in, who do you think the first person I saw was?
How many years ago?
It was I think it was 2018, about March 2018. I'll just tell you because Carla.
I would totally get it. Yeah.
Yes, and she just gave me a huge hug. And from that point on, man, I was loved and it was different and it was so refreshing. I felt comfortable from the moment I walked in and sat in here and just was able to worship and just be freed up. And at the time, Erica was here with Krista.
Okay.
And, Joshua, he was only about 2. And, being a dad with my wife being passed away, and I've got a 2-year-old, and I've got I don't know how old the others were, 6 and 7 and maybe 9 or 10. And they just loved them. And Lydia, too.
Yeah.
And you know what? I love the teaching. I love the worship. But, man, I think one of the things that really got me was the way they loved the kids.
Yeah.
Man, that meant so much to me because I can only do so much. They don't have a mom who could love them, so I'm very protective when I take them places, especially places like a church where I want them to be loved. And, man, it was just so nice.
Yeah.
And, I'll do anything. Chris asked me to teach Sunday school, and I'm thinking that's the last thing I want to do, but I'll do any, I'm thinking if she tells me to jump, I'm just going to say how high because she's blessed me so much.
Yeah.
And I love teaching Sunday school now. I absolutely love it. So.
Hey, that's a shameless plug. If you're out there and you're like, I'll never teach Sunday school, you should definitely sign up to teach Sunday school at Bridge Community Church.
It's a blessing to love the kids.
So I know one of my earliest memories of you is driving in here and seeing you walk to church. Or I still, to this day, will drive down Cambridge and see Caleb just full sprint.
Yeah.
Like, man, that's a good testament to our youth program that your son wants to sprint full speed to get there.
He comes here at 2:00.
On Wednesdays?
Yeah. Church doesn't start till, 6?
Yeah.
He forgoes dinner. Yeah.
I'll often send a text message like to one of the leaders, like, hey, do you have a second? I want to chat with you about something. And they'll say, oh, yeah, we're in the youth room. Come on up. So I'll open the door. And the first thing I do is I look at how many kids are in there. And then I look at my watch. Like, what time do you kids get out of school?
Yeah.
Shouldn't you still be in school? Did you ditch school to come to youth group? So I know you live down the street, but did you grow up in Orange County?
So I grew up in Anaheim.
Okay.
Actually, Stanton before that. And so not too far.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just had a neat, growing up, neat childhood. Mom and dad who loved each other and brought me to church. And I probably had the perfect childhood. We lacked for nothing. But I say the perfect childhood up until a point. And I don't know if you knew this, but my dad passed away.
No.
A heart attack. And actually right in our living room, right in front of
you remember that?
Me. Yeah. And
how old were you, Greg?
I was 10.
And how old was he?
He was 44.
Oh my God.
So he was young. And my mom was in her late 30s. Then I had a sister who was 1 and another sister that was 9. So things changed dramatically from perfection, we lacked for nothing, and finances, love, to just my world being turned upside down.
Did he have, like a health condition prior to that, or was it totally out of the blue?
The interesting thing is, we didn't know this until the autopsy, but he had a congenital heart condition.
Okay.
And never knew it until it was too late, right? And the interesting thing about that is if for instance, if you had that congenital heart situation, it would be nothing because it's very fixable today. The advances that they've made in heart surgery have come millions of miles since then. So if he would have had that now, he would have been saved. It would have just been a routine fix, right? But back then, that was in 1977. I'm 55 today, or now, not today. So that was a very difficult time. A couple years before going into junior high. Junior high is tough enough.
Yeah.
Then I went to the same school from K through 6, and my dad passed away when I was, I think, in 4th grade. But in 7th grade, had to go to a different school. Right, that was tough. Then we moved, and I didn't want to move. So all of a sudden, I became rebellious, and just went through this difficult time. What helped me though, through all my rebellion, is my mom. She was amazing. She loved the Lord. She was strict. Didn't let me get away with anything. In bed at 8:00. But she loved the Lord and she loved me, and that was the big difference that got me through. But I'll tell you what got me through my dad's death when I was 10 years old was it was the Lord. It was the Lord leading me. And I went to church, but I didn't read my Bible. But what I did when I couldn't understand why my life had changed so much. Why did my dad have to die? My mom had a book of Psalms. Back then they just printed the Psalms. And I'd open that up and I'd take about a minute or 5 minutes or 7 minutes whenever I was feeling down. And God always gave me hope. It was amazing. The Holy Spirit, even at a young age, will speak to you if you seek Him. And the hurt and the pain I had from my dad being taken drove me to the Scriptures. And when my wife died years later, I was 49 when she passed away, that's exactly what I did. I was driven to the Scriptures. And Don Granger, when he was up here, he talked about a situation that's still going on. But I noticed that he had his Bible here.
Yeah.
And there was a reason. He just didn't have it for decoration. And he may not have even opened it up. But it's our crutch, and it's more than a crutch. Like Greg Laurie says, it's our hospital, because this is what brings comfort ongoing. Because it would be nice if, like, oh, my dad passed away and it hurt for a while and then the hurt's gone, right? Yeah. Or my wife passed away 5 years ago. I miss her every day. I was driven to this book after she passed away, but I'm still driven to it every day because I've got to do things that it's impossible. How can I be a mom to kids? Really, I can't. But I can go to this word, and he can fill me up with what I cannot do and enable me to do and give me hope, because I can't do it all. But he brings resources, he brings people when I most need them. Yeah. Whatever it is, finances, food, friends, whatever it is. Oh, and then there's the hurt that I feel for my kids, because I hurt for me, but then I hurt for Caleb, Allison, Joshua. And how am I going to help that? Yeah. The Word of God shows me and gives me a stability and a love and a power that I just don't have without this. Yeah. And if I neglect this, I can't do it.
Yeah. I became a Christian when I was a teenager, more or less. And I think for worse, really, I thought of the Bible as, that's, what the expert teaches up on the stage, and I'll listen to whatever. I didn't really read it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until I was like a senior in high school. In fact, I remember for Christmas, I was like very bashful. Church was not like a big part of my family culture at all. But I remember thinking, I want a really nice one, not like to show it off, but I just want to feel like it's valuable and I should keep track of where it's at. And I always had like those, $5 paper cover ones, and I just lose it. And in my mind, I thought, shoot, I lost another one. I'll just grab one at youth group and take another one, whatever. So I remember bashfully asking my mom, hey, could I get a nice Bible for Christmas? And I remember her reaction was like, sure. And I had built this up to be like, oh no, I'm going to ask for a Bible. They're going to think that's weird. But ever since I got it, I still have it upstairs in my office here. It's you just go to it. And it's what people will say, it's not good advice. You read good advice one time and you got it. It's good news. The same scripture speaks to you over and over in different situations and contexts. And I wish that I had known that at a young age like you. That's we're going to get more into your story, but I got to imagine just knowing that tool is in your belt at any time you want, even at a young age, is I'm excited to hear how your story unfolds, but I got to imagine that's a tool you go to often. Yeah. Yeah. So let's fill in the gaps a little bit here. You told me your dad passes when you're 10. Your mom is strict in bed by 8 p.m. Mm-hmm. Sounds like she even waves a finger at you in this story in my mind. And what was middle school, high school like for you? Are you going to church with your mom and your siblings? Are you in a youth group? How do you continue your faith in Jesus at that point?
Yeah, so we went to a Presbyterian church where half the people were born again and loved Jesus, and the other half didn't even believe in the resurrection. So, and you literally, right. Yeah. And I don't know, you go in there and you sit and you just hear a message and you get bored to death, And that was junior high. But it was interesting. My mom was also a little bit different. She'd take us to Melody Land once in a while, She had some friends that were very charismatic. One guy, this is actually just before junior high, but he takes me to a full gospel businessmen's meeting. Are you familiar with full? Those guys are on fire, man. They don't hold back. So, and they speak in tongues, and I speak in tongues, and I believe in speaking in tongues. But when I was 10, I did not speak in tongues, did not want to speak in tongues, didn't know what that was. So we're at this, my mom thinks it's a good idea if I go away on a weekend to a full gospel businessmen's meeting with Manny Mendez. And so I'm sitting there in the back with them, and they're doing their thing, and they're like, okay, now everybody speak in tongues, and everybody stands up and speaking in tongues. And I thought, that's the last thing that I want to do right now. And then they said, okay, if there's anybody in the audience who wants to speak in tongues, come up here. And I stayed in my seat, but Manny Mendez had a different idea. He literally took me by the arm and ushered me up front. And they're, okay, now open your mouth and say stuff. And I was like, I didn't speak in tongues or anything, and I was just very resistant to it.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward, it's made a huge difference in my life now. But my point is this.
Yeah.
I'm going round and round. My point is this, is we got back to our dormitory room, and I'm thinking, what was this speaking in tongues? Why did they make me go up there, and why were they telling me to do this? And it was so uncomfortable, and it's so unnatural. And I opened up the Bible. Guess where I opened up to? Just randomly opened up the Bible, seeking for answers.
I'm going to guess Acts.
1 Corinthians 14. I think that's where they talk about speaking in tongues. And it said right there, this should be done decently and in order, and there should be no more than 2 or 3 at a time, and there should be an interpreter. And I thought, and the Lord showed me, this is real, this is good, but it needs to be done a certain way. And they were not doing it the right way. And God bless them, because it's a great organization and God has used them mightily. But in that situation, they did maybe something they shouldn't have done. And what's encouraging about that is God knew that this 10-year-old boy or 11-year-old boy at the time was hurting, and they did something that made him feel uncomfortable. And I'm going to show them that he's okay, and that the way it's really supposed to be. And it was amazing. I got my answer about speaking in tongues directly from the Lord in his word, just opening it up like this. And since then, God showed me that the answers are here.
Yeah.
Not every church has something that they don't do quite the way they should, right? Because nobody's perfect. And God, he showed me the answers. And I thought that was the neatest thing. God speaks even to a 10-year-old boy who needs to be protected, who's not even looking for the Lord necessarily.
Yeah. That fits so well with yesterday's message about God at his core and his character protects those who need protection. I love that. I was kind of thinking, like, where's the story going? I love how it ends with God whispering to you that you're okay. He's going to take care of you.
Yes.
Beautiful. So middle school, high school, do you go to a Presbyterian church all the way through high school, or?
So yeah, up until high school. What I didn't tell you is that when we moved and how I was rebellious, I didn't want to meet any. Okay, I'm going to this school, but I am not talking to anybody. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to sit by myself, and I'm going to rebel. But God gave me a gift, and I don't know if you knew this, but I used to run.
Oh, I had no idea.
I used to run. I ran in high school, junior high, high school, college, and after college.
Wow.
Athletes in Action. So I was really good when in PE they told us to run a lap, right? So I was in first place, running a lap. And all of a sudden, that became my identity because I got friends because I could run fast.
Yeah.
And that became
What were your events?
So in junior high, I ran the 400 meters and the mile, which is kind of a weird combination if you know anything about running. And in high school, I ran the mile and the 2 mile. But in college, I ended up dropping down to the 400 meters. Normally, you start off at a certain distance and you usually move up. Because in order to move down, you have to have more speed, right? Yeah. And less endurance. You can increase your endurance, but it's hard to increase your speed unless you're naturally gifted. Anyway, so that brought me out of my shell and caused me to like meet friends and interact with people. And God put a teacher in my life who knew that I could run. And at a parent-teacher conference, he said, Emily, your son's a good runner. He's on the track team. Do you go to his track meets? And she's like totally not into sports or anything. No, I don't. And he said, that boy needs someone to watch him run because he's really good and he needs you there. And she never missed a track meet.
That's awesome.
From junior high through college.
Wow.
Yeah. I went to UCSB.
Okay.
And
Outchos.
Yeah. I went to community college, but I ended up at UCSB. And she'd go to my meets. And I remember one time there was a bunch of schools there, USC and so forth. And she doesn't really understand anything about it. She just sees me running and clap. And she's like, go, Greg, go UCSB, go USC. Yeah.
They're all blending together.
Right.
UCLA, UC.
She started rooting for UCSB, then ended up rooting for USC, who I was running against. But yeah, it's good. That's the love of a mother.
That's hilarious. What did you? We could just skip high school if you want. But what did you study in college? I'm curious.
Communication studies.
Okay.
However, for the first 2 years, I didn't know what I was going to do.
And you said that was in junior college.
Right. I went to a couple different junior colleges, but had no idea what I was going to do and didn't even care because I gave my life to the Lord when I was 18 years old. And the way I picked a major, communications, was when I was 20 years old in 1987, I went on a summer missionary project to Seoul, South Korea with a group called Athletes in Action.
Oh, wow.
And they're the athletic ministry of Campus Crusade for Christ. Mm-hmm. And it blew me away. It blew me away. I went there after 2 years of junior college, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I could only run for 2 years, and then you need to go on to a 4-year school, but I wasn't going on to a 4-year school. I was staying at the community college, and all we did was wake up in the morning and run, and then spend the rest of the day talking to people about the Lord. Well, there's two things there. Waking up early in the morning and running with people that were way better than me. And in Seoul, it's nothing but hills. So I'm running every day, getting stronger and better, right? Because of these hills. And then talking to people about Jesus. And the Korean people, man, they are so receptive to the gospel. And I thought, you know what? This is what I want to do. I want to major in communications, and I want to continue running. And because I got better running, I went back to the community college, and my eligibility was up, but I got to run for a track club called Athletes in Action. And I continued to progress and do better. And I had a major now, communication studies, and I knew what I was going to do. And at the end of that year, I remember talking to my, or just before the end of that year, talking to my track coach. And my sister, who was a year younger, she was really good in running. And she got offers from several colleges and took trips. And I remember going up to my track coach and saying, hey, do you think maybe I can kind of piggyback on my sister and maybe go with her to these colleges? And he's saying, Greg, based upon what you did last year, you're just not good enough. So I was appreciative that he was honest with me.
Yeah.
But I kept on training. I kept on getting better. And the school year had ended. I ran in what they call these all-comers meets at Santa Monica College. And the coach from UC Santa Barbara was there. Now, backing up a couple months, I had written him a letter. Hey, I want to come to your school. I'd like it and everything. Would you give me a scholarship? Well, he never wrote back. There was no reason for him to write back. But his best guy was there, and his team was there. And the guy that was, his best guy was also in the same event as me. And so we ran, and I started off, and the competition was really good. It's 2 laps, 800 meters. I was in last place after 1 lap. So it's like, this race isn't going to do much for me getting a scholarship. But then I just felt this incredible boost of strength. And I went from last to second to last to third to last. And all of a sudden, the stand started roaring, and I started running faster. And I ended up just missing first place. But it attracted so much attention that when I got back, the track coach from UCSB called my track coach at Fullerton College, and I was out working out or something. And so when I came back from the workout, the track coach from Fullerton College said, "Hey, Greg, so-and-so from UCSB called, and he's interested in having you come to a school, but he specifically said, I can't give Greg a scholarship, but I'll call him at home." So I was excited. I went home, and I couldn't wait to receive this call. Maybe somehow I can raise the money to go there. So he calls, and he says, "I saw you running. You had a lot of tenacity. I really liked what I saw." And instead of saying, "But I can't offer you any money," he said, "But I've got a full tuition scholarship to give you." Blew me away. How'd that happen? I don't know. An hour before that, he said he didn't have any money. And then he offers me a full scholarship.
Wow.
So it was, God is good. He is good. It doesn't matter where you are. If he intends you to be someplace and you're faithful and just doing what he wants you to do, he provides. And then for the other money, right, tuition was paid for, but didn't have enough money to live there. My mom's saying, "Gregory," because she called me Gregory, I can't pay for you to go to college. And I just said, "Mom, don't worry, God will provide." And he did. He provided like 5 other scholarships where I didn't have to. I think I had to work 1 semester in the dining commons just to get, spending money. But after that, I never had to work again.
Wow.
Just provided everything I needed to a school that I wanted to go to, right?
Yeah. A beautiful spot, too.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
It is. So anyway, so that was college, and we kind of skipped high school. But the important thread in that is that God, he led me the whole way.
I love that in real time. So often people look back in retrospect and see, oh, God was there. I love that in your story, you're recognizing God is there the whole time.
Amen.
That's a really, really cool thing. I think one of the things I always wanted for youth when I did youth ministry was just to recognize that God is actually doing something in your life. I think in my own story, I look back and see, oh, God was there, but I didn't know it in the moment. I think I would have, been spared a lot of, heartache and difficult times had I known. So I love that you knew that all along the way. So you finished college, you're doing, Athletes in Action, is that what it's called? And where does life take you from there?
Well, if I could go back, I want to say something about youth ministers.
Oh, please, yeah.
Pastors, because they play a very special role in my life. Youth pastors, they have a gift of being able to take a kid who is portraying that he doesn't want to be bothered, doesn't want to get to know anybody's kind of cool and to himself, but those kids are really hurting, and very few people can see past that. But I know you do. I've seen you do that with Caleb, and my youth pastor did that with me. I remember when I graduated, he and his wife knock on the door and they say, "Hey, congratulations, here's a Bible." And I'm like, great, but he outlined this verse, Jeremiah 17. Anyway, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, thoughts to give you a future and a hope.
Oh yeah.
Thoughts of not of good of evil, but to give you a future and a hope. And after high school, I didn't know what I was going to do, but that verse made sense to me. I'd never seen it before. Wow, a future and a hope. I know the thoughts that I have towards you. And I ended up going to this Campus Crusade / Youth for Christ conference in Washington, D.C. And God provided the money to go. And I went, and it blew me away. It blew me away because I saw other kids that were interested in knowing the Lord. We went witnessing, but just before that, I went to a Billy Graham crusade.
Wow.
in 1985. And I took my friend because that's what you're supposed to do. Grow up in the church, and Billy Graham comes, you go and you take a friend, right? Who doesn't know the Lord? Well, I went, and man, he was talking about the prodigal son, and I thought, you know what? Jesus died for me. And I mean, I knew it in words, right? But I didn't know it like that actually means something very deep. He shed his blood for me. So my non-Christian friend watched his Christian friend, me, go down on the field and humble myself and say, look, I've been going to church my whole life. And I actually believed that if I died, I'd be saved, but I don't believe I'm living for you, Jesus. And that transformed my life right then and there. That came shortly after getting this Bible.
This was when you were 18 years old.
This was when I was 18, and then I'm like, wow, I got a Bible now. I'm going to read it. And it started making sense.
Wow.
It started making sense because I surrendered. God, I don't care what people, I was really concerned about what are people going to think about me if I mention Jesus, you know, or now I believe, but I'm going to believe in quietly in my own way, and I'm not going to associate with those people that are, you know, always carrying their Bibles everywhere. Then I became one of those people. Like, this book became exciting to me, and then the Washington D.C. thing came, and where there's other people like me, and then I went to college. God opened up the door. My track coach in high school called and said, hey, I've called the coach over at Long Beach City College, and I've set up a meeting for you to go down there. Like, that came out of the blue after the school year was even over. That's awesome. So I go down there, and growing up, we never went out to lunch or dinner or anything, very rarely. He takes me out to lunch, and I'm thinking, this is great, you know, I'm eating food. He says, please come to my school. And that school actually won the state championship and was actually voted by Track and Field News magazine as the best collegiate junior college track and field team ever assembled.
Wow.
That came out of the blue. That was the Lord. I was on the same team with an Olympian from Bermuda who ran against Carl Lewis in the 100 meters in the 1984 Olympics. And it's just like, whoa, God did have plans for me, and they were big plans.
That's awesome.
And I didn't do anything to make that happen.
Yeah, just walked in.
Absolutely nothing, yes.
Yeah.
It could be exciting if you surrender to the Lord and allow him to, and just be faithful.
Yeah. I love that it's coming out just like even in your animation is following God is fun.
Yes.
You know, it's, I felt like about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was kind of pursuing like, okay, I kind of have like a big level calling for my life, but like, God, what is there more specific? And I felt like God told me, make sure people know that the Bible is fun. It's fun to read. It's not, you know, I always grew up like, okay, it's important. I love it. But I always thought like
necessary, you know.
Sit in your quiet corner, open on your desk,
right, and never notes. Smile when you're reading it either.
To you, and I feel like that really got lifted off me when I really started to think of Jesus as a human.
Yeah,
I think it was like middle of college, and someone said, "Do you really think Jesus was serious?" And I thought I never really thought about it. Well, what would you do if you were with 12 dudes in their late teens through 20s, traveling? Well, there'd be inside jokes. There'd be nicknames. Yeah, there's all of those things in the Bible.
Yeah,
there is. And I started to think like, whoa, this is awesome. This is fun. It's funny. It's witty and ironic and all of those things. I feel like it just came alive. You know? I love that comes out. I love that it comes out in just how you talk about God and where He's taken you through. I mean, at this point in your story, you're at graduating from college, but. Speak to the post-college. I know that you are probably aware that we have a growing group of young adults kind of assembling here at the Bridge. Just had a cool worship night last night, I think at Pastor Danny's house. And I think there's a lot of people, they're kind of, post-college or in that mid-20s and kind of figuring life out. What was that like for you?
It was one of the best times of my life. Because I came to the Lord just as high school was ending, and I loved the youth group. But guess what? now I'm no longer in high school. I can't go anymore. So you know what that youth pastor did? He formed a college and career group. And I got to go into that. And now I was with kids my age, but also it was kind of a bigger, I mean, there was 18 and 19-year-olds, a few of us. And then there was guys in their mid-30s.
Oh, wow.
Right. But it was good for me to see, to interact with people who had already been through a lot compared to an 18-year-old.
Yeah, you could kind of see into your future a little bit.
Yes. And just the good examples. And one thing that, excuse me, we would do after Bible study is we would get together and break off into small groups, and we would pray for each other. I had never done that. And it was what I like to call a burden-bearing fellowship. You don't have to have a big burden to pray for, but everybody has little burdens or big burdens. And just sit with these people who I saw them at church but didn't know them. I mean, I thought they were one way based upon my perception. But when someone prays for you, you really see them in a different light. You really see past what they look like or what you seem to think that they are. And you see the Lord, the love of Jesus coming through them and praying for you. And that made that was very meaningful. That helped me in my walk with the Lord. And it's a reason why it's easy for me to love people. Because there's someone good in them, and that's the Lord. And then God answers prayers, and then there's so much comfort in prayer.
Yeah.
And it's so necessary. So that was a huge blessing for me. There was no delay, went right from the high school into the new college and career group. And those were my friends, and those were the people who prayed for me when I went away to South Korea. And I just felt this huge surge of support. Man, these people are praying for me. They wrote me letters. I was only there for 30 days, but yet they wrote me letters, and I think I got a few of them there, and then a few of them were sent back when I got there. But a great time in my life. And it was hard, going from high school to college. But I had this support group of people praying for me, friends, new friends who had already been to college maybe, or who were in college, and tremendous support. And the interesting thing, I don't think you know this, after I graduated from college, and I actually joined the staff of Campus Crusade for Christ / Athletes in Action. And about a year into that, Pastor Mark over at Calvary Chapel of Anaheim, a great church, he's now with the Lord, probably maybe the best Bible teacher I've ever seen, Pastor Mark. He asked me, because the church was supporting me financially, and he said, hey, look, the old college and career group that you were in has now ended. How about you start up another one? And I did.
That's awesome.
I was the college and career pastor or leader, and just did the same thing. We had Bible studies, and we broke off into small groups and prayed for each other.
Yeah.
And guess where I found my wife?
I'm going to guess in the college and career group.
She was the first. She didn't even go to Calvary Chapel Anaheim, but she was the first person to show up at the first meeting. Yes.
And that's your first wife.
Well, that's actually, this is where the story gets convoluted. She was the wife that just passed away.
Okay.
I was married before. And that's a story in and of itself, but it ended in divorce. Not with, the one I was talking to you about. But years later, this was in 1993, that I met the wife that is now with the Lord. But we didn't get married. We didn't get married. We were friends. And then there was a time of where she was... we went our separate ways, and I ended up marrying another person, another woman, and just maybe if I can sum it up, she was the nicest person that you would ever meet, but she was very different abusive, horrible things happened. And it was difficult for me because I was going through a difficult time with a wife that was abusive, extremely abusive, physically, mentally, in every way possible. But no one would believe me because she was so nice, and she could make you think that things weren't really the way they were. And the old friends that I had were mostly in this first group of people ages 18 to 35. But over time, those types of people end up moving on. So by the time I got married, I had a group of new friends who only knew her and me. And over time, we were married for 7 years. People believed that I was doing some things that I shouldn't have been doing because of what she was telling them. And it turned out to be really bad. And it was horrible because I was being abused by this pretty little 110-year-old, or 110-pound, 110-year-old, 110-pound woman. And people like, how can that happen, you know? And it was just horrible.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 29.
Okay.
And we were married for about 7 years. And to this day, people from that era still look at me like they thought I abused her. And it was so sad because there was a betrayal. And she can't, sit here and give you her perspective on it. But the people who knew me best stood by me. And I never knew anything about a narcissistic personality, but that's what it was. And it was abusive, and it was horrible. And it was a very, very, very dark time in my life.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how did you experience God in the midst of all that? Was it a lot of asking why, or were you close with God? What was your relationship with God like through that?
See, that's a very good question. And looking back, I was in a backslidden state because the way I responded to being treated unfairly was I stopped reading my Bible. And I would go to church, but I was with the Lord, but I was distant from the Lord. And that made things way harder than it should have been. Yeah. And it was, when I had another Bible study during that time, and the people in the Bible study, they thought that that I was abusing my wife, so I couldn't fellowship with them. And I was alone. For the first time in my life, I was lonely. My wife would go periods of time, my first wife, complete difference from my second wife. But she would go periods of time without talking to me, not saying a word, not looking at me. If I was watching TV, she'd turn the channel, and if I would ask a question, I wouldn't get an answer, and it would happen for days, weeks. A couple of times it happened for 3 months at a time.
Wow.
And I remember just being so alone and so lonely. And I tried to seek the Lord, but I was very inconsistent in that. To my demise, right? But again, it's almost a little bit like when I was 10 and I was brought up in front of the church, not the church, this full gospel businessman's meeting where they made me, and God comforted me by showing me in His Word that, hey, I'm still here and this is really the way you're supposed to do it. God finally brought truth. And the people who were important, the pastor and some of the elders, they saw that things weren't the way that she was describing them to be. And God, He rescued me. He gave me, He allowed me to leave. I was able to leave that abusive circumstance and did get divorced. And then the girl with the white jacket who came in to the first meeting of the college and career group came back into my life.
Yeah.
We ended up at someone's house, hadn't seen each other for years and years and years, and God brought her into my life. We weren't dating before. She was just in the group.
Yeah.
And I told her a little bit what was happening, and she started, tears were going down her eyes. She didn't judge me like all the new friends had, but she believed me. And we ended up getting married. And the church that she was attending, her dad's the assistant pastor over at Calvary Chapel of Tustin, they believed me too. And they accepted me, and they embraced me, and they loved me, and they restored me. There was actually a slight church split with the other church because there was so much division because of truth and not truth and people taking sides. And I hate to be the lightning rod, but that's what it was kind of was. And the devil took advantage of that. But Calvary Chapel Tustin believed me, and they embraced me and restored me back into the ministry and allowed me to teach. And and my marriage, my second marriage, was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was, we had a great marriage, and we ended up having kids, and it was heaven on earth, and it was God showing me that, yeah, you went through a difficult, dark time, but I love you, and I've restored you. I've restored your reputation. I've restored your happiness. Believe it or not, I look back on that time, and honestly, for about 7 years, I didn't even smile.
Wow. I can't imagine you not smiling.
I was just walking around, just I didn't smile, and I didn't laugh, and I'd forgotten what joy was.
Wow. I can't imagine you that I know not smiling or laughing.
Right.
Sometimes we don't even get a word out before you're laughing.
Yes, yes, and I have so much joy.
Yeah.
And also it made me so much more thankful. Thank you, God, for giving me a wife who loves me, who has a mom and dad. They have a mom and dad who love me. The whole family loved me. The whole church loved me. And you give me kids. Caleb. Now I'm going to throw you a curveball here, okay? Ready? Caleb, Allison, Olivia, Joshua. Now, you haven't heard about Olivia. No one in this, probably who's listening, has heard of Olivia. But Olivia was our third child. And we went to the doctors, and they do the ultrasound. And 4.5 months into it, something went wrong. She ended up having a situation called hydrocephaly, water in the brain. And we were praying for a miracle, but she passed away. And I never talk about it, but it's important to mention from time to time because she was alive. She was in Amy's womb. And Amy even had to go to the hospital and birth that child.
Yeah.
And it was the weirdest feeling because I had been in the hospital where everything is joyful that the child comes, and this time the child comes and the child's dead.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, the child's alive in heaven, but the child's dead. And it's such a sad feeling. And we even had a funeral for her. But she is my child, and I will see her again in heaven.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting? On my wife Amy's deathbed, she she was talking, and she said, "Who is that little girl?" At the end, that little girl was with another person, maybe an angel, but there was this little girl. And when when my wife lost Olivia, it was sad. And I remember coming home from the hospital weeping with my mother-in-law and my father-in-law. And then after that, I started getting better. I started feeling better. And I was able to, like Don Granger, he mentioned, we're able to compartmentalize things. But my wife hurt. And I don't think she ever really got over that, because it is such a painful thing. And nobody talks about miscarriages until you have one. And then people come out of the woodwork and they say, you know what? I'm praying for you because that happened to me too. And I know what you're going through.
That's our experience for sure. I don't know if you knew that, but we shared that here at the church. Our first child. Yeah. And it was one of those isolating moments where it was, do you talk about it? Do you not? And I was always blown away, because the second you talk about it, other people start looking around, and then they do the me too. Mm-hmm. And you, like, where were you when we needed you most? Nobody was talking about these things. Mm-hmm.
And you suffer in silence in a sense.
Yeah, but I relate to what you're saying. There's a grief period, and then I think just how we're wired, the ability to kind of compartmentalize where, just weighs heavy in a home, especially on my wife for a long time. We actually ended up going to counseling to kind of work through some of those things. But those are really difficult times. I had no idea. Mm-hmm. When you were saying that, we'll get there in a second. When you were saying Amy was on her deathbed and she saw a little girl and with a man that you couldn't see, I immediately thought of your dad. Mm-hmm. That maybe they were holding hands. So I don't want to cut off this story. I don't know if you're done telling it, but I'd love for you just to walk through. You have 3 kids that are still with us.
Right.
That are, they're all different, aren't they? And they are hilarious. Your youngest son just cracks me up so much. I just think he's
Joshua.
Yeah, Joshua. But talk us through having those kids, and what ends up transpiring in your home with Amy getting ill and all those things.
So, the kids are, I don't want to say I think, I know, they're just the greatest blessings. They're different. Allison reminds me of Mommy. She is very attuned to how I'm feeling. If I'm upset, the boys won't notice it. But Allison, Daddy, are you upset? No. Daddy, you're upset. She has that special, she reminds me so much of her mommy, and it's so good to have her. Joshua, he was only a year old when Mommy passed away, and Caleb, he's a trooper, man. He was 8, and there's a story I want to tell about Caleb, and it'll just touch your heart. At the funeral was held the same place where Pastor John's funeral was, Calvary Chapel of Tustin. And Pastor Danny met my father-in-law, and they arranged it, and they had it. The place was packed. I don't know if you've ever been. It was big. It was packed with Amy's funeral. And Caleb, being 8 years old, he tugged on me. He says, Daddy, it was during the time when you can go up and you can talk. And I didn't have anything to say. I was just in a different place. And Caleb said, Daddy, let's go up. He goes up there in front of a packed church. And this 8-year-old boy who just lost his mommy, and this is what he said. He says, everything is going to be okay.
Wow.
He just lost his mom. And he had the faith and something in him that he, even though he was hurting, he saw that other people were hurting.
Yeah.
And he wanted to comfort them. An 8-year-old boy.
Wow.
Don't worry. Everything is going to be okay.
Wow.
And there wasn't a dry eye in that sanctuary. The boy he's got a special gift that you just can't develop. I mean, it's something that God put in him. He's aware and he's concerned about people, and he has a trust in the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't know if I wrote you a note or just mentioned this to you.
I remember that, right.
It was pre-COVID, now that's how we mark everything.
Right.
We were having a worship night here, and I think I was back doing the slides here in the AV booth, and the kids were here in the sanctuary, and, it's just worship. And I remember you were worshiping, you just had kind of your hands up, just quietly worshiping, and I could see Caleb, he had his arms crossed, not like in a defiant way, but he was kind of taking it all in, looking at everything. Then as clear as day, I can remember he turns and he just looks at you, and you're just worshiping, and he's looking at you and looking at you and looking at you, and then he faces forward, and I see both of his hands go up. He just wanted whatever's going on with Dad right now. I want a piece of that. And I remember thinking, the kid's not even in middle school yet, and he's just throwing himself before God. I will always remember that. That was wonderful. So I think, Greg, I know that there's a risk sometimes because people have heard your testimony before, but I know many who are going to watch and listen will not be familiar with it. So what happened with Amy?
She had breast cancer. You don't expect that. She had a lump on her breast, and she went to the doctor, and I remember getting a phone call from the doctor, and I was sitting on the couch surrounded by my 3 kids, and I'm sorry, not 3 kids, 2 kids, because my wife was 8 months pregnant with Joshua when she was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, I had no idea.
8 months pregnant. Allison was 4. Caleb was 7. And I remember receiving that phone call. Your wife has cancer. Man. So initially, things went well. We went and we received a lot of prayer. We even went to a healing service. And this was shortly after, a month later, Joshua was born. A month after that, we went to a healing service in Arizona. And this lady prayed for Amy. And she didn't even say anything. She just came and she prayed. And then she said, Amy, is there any way we can tell that God healed your cancer? And Amy had a lump, and she was feeling around for the lump. And she says, I don't feel anything. And the lump was gone.
Wow.
The lump was gone. And about a year, and from then on, about a year later, Amy's felt great. She changed her diet to more, good vegetables and that kind of stuff. She had more energy. She never caught a cold in between the time she was diagnosed with cancer and the time she passed away. The lump had gone. The breast surgeon said, I don't know what happened. The breast surgeon measured it, and it went from maybe the size of a ping pong ball to maybe that small. You couldn't even feel it.
Wow.
And he says, I've never seen anything like this. I don't know what you did, but instead of going in for surgery, you don't need to anymore now. And just keep doing what you're doing. And for a year later, things went excellent. They're really good. And we started thinking, cancer, and this is nothing, But then the cancer did come back, and we noticed it on her birthday in October. And by the time she passed away was 2 months later.
Wow.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah, I remember.
Christmas Eve, just as it was getting dark. And so she was on hospice for a month before that. And that was difficult because when she was on hospice, the bed was in the living room. Much of that time, the kids were at Grandma and Grandpa's house because Joshua, he'd pull out the plug of oxygen, and it was better.
Mm-hmm.
And we brought them back in a couple days before she passed away. And one of the hardest things I've ever had to do was sit down and talk to my kids and tell them it looks like Mommy's gonna pass away. And they'd only seen, they knew Mommy had cancer, but like Mommy was doing great, you know? And then for it to come on all of a sudden, it was a big shock, obviously. Caleb really, he took it hard, but he took it well. And what I mean by that is Caleb was grieving in the way that maybe one should. You're hurting and you're crying and you have you don't care what people think. You just you let it all out. And he hurt for a long time. And up until about maybe 6 months ago, I would be awakened at night with at least one of the kids crying at night because they miss Mommy, you know. Allison probably had a more intimate relationship with Mommy than anybody had because she was the only daughter. Yeah. There's a special connection there. And after Amy passed away, Allison took it differently. Oh, I'm okay. I'm not sad. And in reality, she was being destroyed inside. Yeah. And it would come out occasionally. I'd need a break and someone from the church would come over and babysit. And she would just look at them and she would say, "You're not my Mommy." And she would yell at them, "Little sweet Allison." This rage would come out times. And it wasn't her fault, but she didn't know how does a 5.5-year-old deal with her Mommy being gone? Yeah. All of a sudden. And then about a year into it, she just broke down and was just crying at dinner one night and just sobbing uncontrollably. And it was the best thing that could have happened to her because she released all of that burden. And now we make it a practice. If we miss Mommy, we're going to cry. Yeah. And we're going to, because it's a very sad thing. You can gloss over it and only see part of it. Mommy's in heaven. Mommy's not suffering. We're going to see Mommy again. And we do talk about that. But there's another very practical part. There's a spiritual, which is true, and there's a practical, which is true. And they intertwine, they go together. And the practical is we hurt and we miss Mommy every day. Yeah. And we need Mommy, but Mommy's not here, so we need to rely upon the Lord. But we're still going to talk about Mommy. We're not going to pretend Mommy doesn't exist. And we're going to thank God for Mommy. And every night, I pray with the kids. I put them down. The boys have their own room. I pray with them. Allison has her own room. I pray with them. And we always say, "God, thank you for Mommy and Daddy." And then other people. But we always talk about Mommy. We always thank God for Mommy because God isn't the God of the dead. He's the God of the living. And Mommy is alive. Yeah. And that is very true. One day we're going to see her again. And I have a personal belief that the greater the tragedy, the greater the joy will be at the end. There's joy, extreme joy is always connected with some sort of tragedy.
Wow,
You can't separate those. You can experience a tragedy, but don't stop there. Look towards the joy.
yeah,
But don't overlook the fact that it hurts.
yeah,
And we don't have some of the things that other kids have, you know. They don't have a mommy to go back to. But you know what? God always provides. Mommy's mom lives about 7 minutes away from here. Mommy's sister lives with Grammy. And they have been, though they can't replace Amy, they have been substitutes, very good substitutes for Mommy. And they spend time with Amy and Joshua and Caleb. And I am blessed to have a mother and a father-in-law and a sister-in-law who love Jesus with all their hearts. And they love those kids. And they've been so good to them.
yeah,
And that is something only God can give. I couldn't have done that, you know.
yeah,
So, and we're blessed because some people, they don't have that. Either maybe their in-laws, you know, don't know the Lord, or maybe they know the Lord, but they're far away. But they've loved those kids, and God has provided for them. I thank Him for that.
I love how you're describing just the grief process. I think when you start thinking about your children growing into adulthood, I think one of the long-standing gifts that you're giving them is to let the hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I even think of my own life and thinking about, you know, so often some of the griefs, big and small, were done privately and quietly, and they were bottled up, you know, and there was never a really profound example of, we're going to talk about seeing Mommy in heaven, but when you're sad, we're going to pause and we're going to cry. I think, man, there's a gift awaiting those kids just in maturity and emotional ability to process for the rest of their lives because of what you've done for them. It's really, really awesome.
And to be able to identify with other people who hurt too.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do that until I experienced what I experienced.
Yeah.
And then I'm much more sensitive to others that hurt. Doug and Martha, Connie, I weep for them.
Yeah.
I feel something. Whenever I go to a funeral, it takes me to a place where I don't think anyone can get to unless they've experienced the same thing. And I learned what it is to be able to weep with those who weep. And this church is very good at that. What Danny did the Sunday after Robert passed away, to acknowledge that and have everybody to go over to them if they wanted to and just hug them, and Connie too. And the interesting thing is, words are almost useless when it comes to that. And I think that holds people back because they think, I don't know what to say. I really feel for them, but I don't know what to say. But the best thing is just to give a hug and just hold them.
Yeah.
And just show them that you are praying for them, but you love them. That speaks volumes.
I think that's tremendous wisdom for people who are going to hear this, coming from someone who's experienced great loss. I know for certain I've had that feeling cross my mind. I don't know what to say. And I love how you said that you don't really need to say anything. There's nothing you're going to say that's going to change anything, but just your presence.
And many times you shouldn't say anything. But just like you said, your presence.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. I you know what, as we're talking through this, I think I'm just struck, you know, it seems like grief has different seasons, but it doesn't always just go away, and it probably won't. But I'm just blown away, Greg, by the strength that God has put in you, because it's not just that your kids are grieving, you're grieving too. And you're grieving as an adult while they're grieving as children. It's two very different things. But I think the way that God has led you to navigate that is just, it's beautiful. Not in the way where everything just comes out nice and tidy, but in the way that, you know, God is honored, that your kids are growing and and learning because of your example. So I just, before we move on, I just wanted to honor that in you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's a special connection with worship. And there's in my life, and grieving. I sit there next to Wanda in the third row.
That's Greg's spot. If you show up before him, don't sit there.
And there's a reason I do that. I like sitting there because if you notice, amongst those beautiful women who have lived life, many of them have lost husbands.
Yeah.
I think of Gwen, and by the way, side note, have you ever seen a woman of any age with such a beautiful smile as Gwen? It's amazing. But they've been through hurt, and I like sitting there because I belong. It's almost an exclusive set of people who have been through such hurt that we don't even have to really talk about it. And once in a while we mention it, something here and there, but we don't even have to talk. I can, this is weird because I never was able to understand this, but it's true. I can see it in their eyes, and they can see it in my eyes, and I can feel their compassion towards me. And it's a beautiful thing. But worship has been so comforting to me. Prior to Amy passing away, I didn't raise my hands in church. But now I raise my hands and I just release everything. And I realize that that's what Amy's doing. She's worshiping the Lord. I think of the founder of this church, Noel. I think of John. Sometimes when I'm worshiping, I think, you know what? They're not here, but I can almost envision what it was like when they were here and standing and probably worshiping the Lord, because now that's what they're doing in heaven. And what I'm doing now, I'm sharing in the same activity as what they're doing in heaven. And it's such a beautiful thing that I can engage with the saints who have gone before us and worship the Lord. And it's such a source of strength and encouragement and comfort. And it reminds me that it's only a matter of time. God will take care of everything. It's going to be difficult, but he takes care of things, maybe not in our timing. But there will come a day when I will enter in and I will join them. And I have a personal promise from the Lord. And I don't want to be extra biblical, but when I was in elementary school, before my dad passed away, we lived in a cul-de-sac. He would sometimes work from home, and I would come around the corner, and I would see him at the end of the cul-de-sac, and I would just take off running. It's probably what made me so fast. I'd run, and I'd just jump into his arms. And when I enter heaven, I think, and Amy, my wife, she wasn't a fast runner, but she is now. So when I made the Lord promise me that when I enter into heaven, Amy and I are going to run together faster than ever into the arms of the Lord. And my dad's going to join us. And we're all going to run together. And anyway, it's just it's going to be, what a joyful day that will be.
Yeah.
What a joyful day that will be.
Wow. Man, it's a lot of things to consider and think about, but I'm kind of blown away, Greg, in just this short amount of time, just how much like conversational wisdom that you carry. I think one of my experiences and my feeling for you is you're not shy about sharing it if people ask. I have this memory of you. I remember it was a midweek and I hadn't seen you for a little while, and I saw you and you were looking down at something. And that was when I realized you have your note cards because you're a Bible memorizer.
Oh, right.
And, I...
probably this.
You're just memorizing scriptures.
Romans 8, yeah.
So I was thinking about that because this is like maybe TMI, but I'll just come out with it. When I was in college, I had this professor that really pushed for memorizing scripture. And so I would write scripture on note cards. I'd cut them in half so they would fit in my wallet. And I'd started doing that. And, this is kind of feels a little shameful now, but honest truth. I started doing it, and I realized that as I would do that, people would be curious, hey, what are you doing? And in my heart, I realized, I'm getting attention for this. I'm going to keep doing it. That's really what my thought was. And I remember feeling like God convicted me months later. You've learned lots of scripture, but you've done it for attention. You haven't done it for me. And I remember feeling like, really like, man, you should be beyond this. Why are you still seeking, attention in that way? And so I had that in my mind when I realized that you got your head down and your cards. But I remember asking you, what are you doing? You said, oh, just nothing. I'm like, oh, what are you doing? And you told me, I'm kind of memorizing some scriptures. And I remember thinking, that's how you're supposed to be doing that. It just feels like what you have taken in from God's word kind of oozes out of you. I feel like people who know you know that, so many people have said, you got to have Greg on. Have you ever talked to Greg? You got to have Greg on the podcast. You got to let Greg share the amount of wisdom that comes out of Greg. And I think we can wrap up relatively soon, but I got one foot in the millennials, so I wrote down a Bible verse on my phone for you. I was thinking about you, and sometimes scriptures just come right to mind, and sometimes they don't. And this morning I was kind of flipping through my Bible. I like to go through and see what I've underlined and put stars next to and stuff. And I flipped a couple pages and I saw this, and I looked down and I just thought, this is for Greg. This is what I think about Greg. And I think in our hour plus of talking together, it's just even more confirmation that this is you. This comes from James chapter 3. It says, wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure. Then it's peace-loving, it's considerate of others, it's submissive to God, full of mercy and good fruit, it's impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. And I thought, you know what? That is Greg. That's Greg's wisdom. It's pure. It's never self-seeking. It loves peace. It's considerate. Even a conversation we were having off air before we started, you were telling me about something maybe you disagreed with, and you just kept saying, you know what, but man, they've been so good to me. They love me. And I just thought 100% that's the scripture. It's considerate. And so I just wanted to affirm that in you. I think even before I really knew you, I could see that in you. So many people, I got to say, you and just a handful of others have been the most requested person in my email inbox. You got to have Greg on the podcast. So I'm glad you're finally here, so the emails will stop. But Greg, you're a tremendous man of wisdom. I hope when people hear this, they see you and think, I can approach him. I can relate with some of his story. And so as we kind of wrap up, I want to give you a moment. What would you say to people? Maybe one or two things, maybe somebody who's grieving or somebody who's feeling their way out. What does God have for me? What would you share with them?
Well, I wasn't always like, memorizing scriptures. I kind of did it out of necessity. So I would share that sooner or later, you're going to go through, if you haven't already, and even if you have, times that are just going to be overwhelming. And you're not going to be no matter how much you've been through, you're not going to be able to figure this out. And it's so important to rely upon the Lord in a practical way by seeking Him in His Word. And after Amy passed away, I did that. I opened up the Word of God, and I read and I read and I read and I read. But I only remember reading one verse, and it was out of the Psalms. Psalm 146 I'll just tell you what it says. It says, I will relieve the fatherless and the widow. And that promise strengthened me daily, because I couldn't remember anything else that I read. And I read and I read and I read. But I remembered, I will relieve the fatherless and the widow. And then I looked back, and I was fatherless when I was 10. I was a widow when I was 49. So that just seeking Him, and He'll give you something. And then when He does, rely upon it, highlight it, go back to it, and start with that, and don't let go of it. And the other thing is this, and it actually relates to Colton when he came running in here one day.
While I was preaching?
Right. I had a similar thing with Caleb. But anyway, the commonality is this, is Colton came in here because he was afraid. And he was looking for his mommy. And kids, they will reject inferior love. Anything that is inferior to the love of God, we should reject too. The story with Caleb, when he was about 2 years old, he was fascinated with foosball. Pop, pop, pop. And he was getting too close to those bars. And I said, Caleb, get away from there. And he wouldn't. So I finally had to remove him, set him on my lap. Well, long story short, he ends up going back and getting popped in the head with one of those bars. And it was a room full of, it was like during a party. And he started screaming, and women from all over the room came running to him, and they started screaming, and one picked him up. And it was the neatest thing. He looked at her, and he says, I want my daddy. And just like Colton, mommy. Yeah. And that's what we need to do in whatever situation we find ourselves. Reject anything else, because anything else is inferior to the love that the Lord has for us. Wow. And that'll get you through anything.
Wow.
I want Jesus.
Wow. I can't imagine just a better way to end. I think I know you well enough. You're a great, friendly guy. I think you're probably going to meet some really awesome people that are going to approach you. I'm excited to hear what conversations and friendships kind of grow out of this podcast together. So we'll sign off. I just want to thank you again. Thanks for setting aside the time right in the middle of your day. Thanks for praying over me before we started. It was great to pray together, and I just really enjoyed our time, and I'm really looking forward to how God uses your testimony to encourage and uplift a lot of people who are in need.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. We'll sign off.